We've got 3 weeks until we get to our next race in Singapore. Do you think, because there's obviously rumors always swirling about which races are going to be back on the calendar in 2023, do you think we'll have some clarity of what that calendar will look like by the time we get to Singapore? And do you think that some of those empty seats for 2023 will ultimately be filled?
Yeah, I mean, I hope we have some clarity about next year's calendar, because there's a lot of people trying to book flights and hotels. I mean, you like to get an early glance at the calendar if you're working in Formula One, because it means you can book into hotels before the fans do. I mean, look, I love it that so many fans turn up at races, but it actually becomes quite difficult to logistically move around the world if you don't have some kind of foresight of what's going on. So I hope we get something close to a calendar. We've seen a few rumored things. Clearly, there's a few contracts yet to be signed. Monaco's one we've seen flying around in recent days, talk of it being signed, perhaps not quite being signed yet, all the rest of it. But there's a few like that where I think that we're going to have Monaco on the calendar next year, but there's a few others which are up in the air. And I guess those are the ones that F1 wants to nail down before it puts out this calendar for next year. But it's usually around now. We always used to say in Monza, you would get a calendar for the following year. That's sometimes trends a bit later in seasons where it's complicated, and things like China, it's still very complicated to get everyone into China for a motor race. It's not an easy place to access at the moment. So no doubt that's part of what's holding it up. Then in terms of the drivers and who's driving where for next year, it's hard to know. Like I said earlier, I think sometimes that first domino falls and then everything goes after it. But right now, there's no obvious reason for a rush. There's talk that Alpine are testing a few drivers. Nick de Vries is one of them. They've got to test it in last year's car because they're not allowed to test this year's car under F1's regulations. But Jack Doohan's in there as well. And so apparently Colton Herta as well, although that's coming from the Red Bull side, putting him in Alpine to test. So the fact you've got all of this going on, it seems like these decisions are taking a lot of thought. There's a lot of options out there. But if one team and one driver connect and go for it, so let's say De Vries gets taken off the market by Alpine, then all of a sudden I think it speeds everything else up. But I wouldn't hold your breath. I wouldn't hold your breath for anything immediately. Probably famous last words, and it'll get announced by the time people listen to this podcast. But as far as I know, nothing immediate just yet.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content plus live streaming, make sure to subscribe to ESPN Player.